Do you know what is significant about 2016? Would you like me to tell you? What is significant about 2016 is that this has to be the year that we, all of us, make changes happen within the law with regards to children and families, both biological and non-biological families. And central to all of this are grandparents who presently do not have any rights. And then I added this to it. What I propose is a totality. All of us get thousands of people to sign petitions, and then via Maggie, she doesn't know about this yet, but via Maggie's charity, you know, send all these thousands of signatures for each of our petitions. Now, you know, and then Maggie is a centralised unit, sends them to government.
They'll use it as toilet paper. They will. The petitions go nowhere because the government do what they want. We want Guy Fawkes back.
Well, you know, there's got to be a way, there's got to be
the only way
something.
Is for everybody to come out and march. And then the media pick up.
Yeah.
But 100 here, 200 there. I mean, look at this conference.
This is what, this is...
people only, it's not on.
But maybe it's marketing. You have to get in with modern marketing.
What it's done to us, as in steal our children, we need to all stand together and go take our children back.
Well, not good.
Yeah? We can't, why should we be prosecuted when, how can we get them for abduction and kidnap on our own children?
I know.
It's the state that has kidnapped and abducted our children.
Yeah. Well, like Maggie said, the thing is we've got to be doing more. Anyway, you know, I'll carry on reading. What I propose, and remember this is just where I'm coming from at the moment, the things that have really been affecting me, and trying to find a way forward, but trying to find a way forward for everybody in that. You know, because I'm never going to stop fighting like all of you. I will fight now to my death, and especially after I receive this book, because they've already got me dead and buried. So, what I propose is an updating of an outdated system that has become a political and economic mechanical monster that is failing children and families in more ways than it is helping them. It is we who make cultures, and we have the right to change it. I'm sure you will agree that the people of this country are worried about the changes they see happening all around them, but feel helpless to do anything about it. But there is a great and growing desire for change, and all of us must act. What is happening to our children, our grandchildren? They are being vaccinated, medicated, and groomed for sex and violence everywhere they look. What happened to childhood? What happened to innocence? What is happening to the family in this country? It appears to me that the government are doing everything they can to break up the family with its targets for fostering and adoption, and speeding up the process so that families don't stand a chance of women winning their battle to keep their children. David Cameron made a commitment in November 2015 to increase the numbers of children being adopted and to make it harder to, for children to be placed with relatives under an SGO. Local authorities also measure their success in terms of adoption numbers. Yeah, that's it. That's how they measure their success. The government are also looking to set up more fostering and adoption agencies. God help us all. Where does Cameron think that he's going to get all these children to be placed for adoption? Shall I tell you where? From his mindset, that is where. Does he see our children and grandchildren as just objects to be forcibly removed from their families and trafficked through a system concerned mainly with politics and economics? Over and over, I have heard significant others say that social services take children away from the families that don't need to be taken, and those children that really need protection are left with their abusers. And this is a common fact. Is this because some families are easier targets than others? Let's target easy targets so that we can reach government targets for fostering and adoption. Removing children from families appears to be big business now. It's actually spreading like a cancer. Everyone knows someone who has had their children taken into care. What is going on? No one should have the right to take children and grandchildren away from their natural family unless it's an absolute resort. Over and over, I've heard identical textbooks accounts from people all over the UK about the means used by social services to forcibly remove children and grandchildren from their families, mine included. Is this because the social services follow textbook guidelines that they apply these to everyone? What happened to human hearts and individuality? I believe that all attention should be placed on working with the family, preventative work, in a therapeutic, innovative, creative, compassionate way, for the very purpose of keeping children with their families and extended families and move forward from there. This should be the priority. The fault is not always with the social care professionals whose ego places them above the subordinate families that they feel they are working with, whom they speak to and treat like children and punish for not doing as they're told. Neither is it the fault of social care professionals who want to do good, but whose hands are tied by a closed mechanical monster which punishes them if they step out of line. The fault is with the system. The social care system arose, developed, and functions in a pattern of self-organisation beyond the conscious intentions of many of the individuals involved. It is a social construction and it is failing humanity. There are many things I don't understand as a grandparent. Why give money to strangers to look after someone else's children and grandchildren when the financial help could eradicate the financial stresses of a struggling family that led to its breakdown? As a grandparent, I find it difficult to understand why the foster carers that abused my grandchildren for 1.5 years were being paid £600 a week to care for them. Yet, if I was caring for my own grandchildren, there would be very little financial help and support for me, if any at all. Do you as a grandparent feel the same frustration as I feel? None of this makes sense. How can social services get away with always stating, that it's about the children's wishes and needs when it suits their purpose, but ignore the children's wishes and needs when, for example, the child is wishing and asking to go home? What is the psychopathology of a social care system that wants children to eradicate their family like an instant death, as in the case of adoption, or a slow death over time, as in the case of fostering? Can a social worker justify saying to a young parent, play dead, or to a grandparent at Christmas, your grandchildren are forgetting about you at Christmas. Or that your grandchildren don't want to see you. What kind of evil is this? What kind of sadist would say to a sobbing grandparent at Christmas, your grandchildren are forgetting about you? That's what happened to me, yeah. Yeah. How can any social care system reconcile the families that they have destroyed? And who are these people judging and taking our children and grandchildren away? I recently drove 200 miles to speak with the head of a social care department. I explained that everyone stands naked in the front of a psychic, which I am. What I meant was that we see the shadow personality they try to hide from the world. They present only one face, the face they want people to see and believe. He cringed and said to me, "Oh, you wouldn't want to see my life." Yet this person and everyone below him are making devastating judgments about others and taking their children and grandchildren away. I told him that while the professionals were writing about me and doing assessments, I was receiving flashbacks from their lives, from their childhoods, their relationships. I saw the reasons they became child psychologists, CAFCAS workers and social workers, and I said that God forbid the system was ever turned against these people. They would probably not only lose their children and grandchildren, but they would probably lose their jobs. My story begins with my little grandson and granddaughter in the back of my car, returning them to their mother after a day out with me. My grandson was sobbing uncontrollably. "Nanny, please don't..."
Sandra. Yeah, you have a story.
I know.
Forget it.
I'm just going to say this little bit. I just want to say this little bit. My grandson was sobbing uncontrollably. "Nanny, please don't take me home. Please let me come and live with you. I will carry this memory until the day I die." Alright, I'll go through it really quick again. I had to return my grandchildren home to their mother, who was no longer in a relationship with my son, because I was told by the NSPCC that I would be arrested for abduction of my grandchildren. I honestly wish I'd taken that risk. The social services took my grandchildren and I didn't see them for 9 months. My grandchildren were then placed with strangers, foster carers. They abused my grandchildren for 1.5 years. They were then trafficked through the system to more strangers, more foster carers. There has never been any accountability for the abuse of my grandchildren. And why weren't the professionals involved in the decision making of placing my grandchildren with this family brought to justice? But instead, they're allowed to go on making more decisions and forcibly removing children from loving families. I know that thousands and thousands of loving grandparents are holding grief-stricken memories inside them, and there is no outlet for their experiences. I remember in the court waiting room speaking with a CAFCAS worker. Sobbing, I told her how much I love my grandchildren, and her reply was, "Love is not enough. Love is not enough." And now I can add to her words And neither was a big house, 2 cars, and lots of money. Because all that my grandchildren were to them was a means to an end. And though my grandchildren bear the mental and emotional scars of that experience, that family of strangers, the social workers, CAFCAS, and all the other professionals involved are allowed to get away with it. Do we see love and compassion and healing being taught anywhere in the school curriculum? No, we don't. Dehumanization. What is the definition of dehumanization? Dehumanization is used by dictatorship to prevent opposition by citizens presenting these citizens as undeserving of rights. The state presents citizens as childlike, incapable of managing their own affairs. Those in power show a cold lack of empathy. They objectify their subordinates, treating them only as a means to an end, rather than focusing on their essential human qualities. Dehumanization removes a person's voice to speak out and ignores individuality. When people become objects, things, the logic follows that they become dispensable, so any atrocity can be justified. Dehumanization violates our human rights. I'm sure that anyone who has been through the system will relate to the above in their encounters with social services. When will this kind of treatment by social services of children and adults be regarded as organised criminal activity? And social workers need to stop misusing Section 20 of the Children's Act 1989, which outlines their duty to provide a child with somewhere to live only if the child doesn't currently have a place to live or a safe place to live. I know, and you know, there are thousands and thousands of biological and non-biological grandparents out there who can give their grandchildren a wonderful, loving, safe place to live, and they are not being given the chance. I believe in love, truth, faith, and compassion, but it appears that telling the truth, telling the way it is, has become illegal in this country. With gagging orders, secret courts, imprisonment, the government will do anything in its power so the truth about what is really going on is never revealed. But I feel that this illegal stealing of children from the families who love them will not be allowed to go on for many more years. It is illegal and it is inhumane. I believe we have to become fearless in order to reach the freedom we need to take back our children and grandchildren from a system that has lost sight of itself. Some of you may recall the suicides of those parents and grandparents not strong enough to deal with this cruel system, the sense of failure, the sense of helplessness. Do social workers understand the impact on people's hearts and lives of what they are doing? I believe that practically every family has the potential for change with love, understanding, support and education. These children will never see those families ever again. I'm a grandparent and I speak on behalf of all biological and non-biological grandparents. How have we survived this system? Has it hardened your heart? Has it caused you ill health? Or has it just given you a strength you never knew you had through a deep love for your grandchildren to keep on fighting until justice is done and they are home? I, like many thousands and thousands of grandparents, have fought so hard for so many years to see my grandchildren who are in care. Via Maggie's helpline, Children Screaming to be Heard, one can see that we are all saying the same things. Thousands of us being told our grandchildren don't want to see us. And if this isn't excruciating enough and heartbreaking enough, we are asked to write down memories so that strangers, social workers, can read them to our own family. About 2 years ago, I received a book from Social Services. It is called Dear Grandma, From You to Me, A Journal of a Lifetime. I was asked by the manager of the social worker to fill in the questions in the book so they could be read to my grandchildren, who were 7 years old and 9 years old at the time, by yet another social worker passing through their life. I was absolutely devastated and horrified to read that one of the questions asked what I would like written on my tombstone, my epitaph. Not only did this social care system have me dead and buried already, but they were going to discuss the words of my tombstone with a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old child missing me, missing their family, and wanting to return home. Yeah. If that isn't child abuse, all right, I will. It's nearly finished now. Okay, this is the book. I believe, and I make no apologies for this, that the lunatics truly are running the asylum. Is this what we grandparents are reduced to? A book? A book that Vera, social worker, will discuss the words of our tombstones with the grandchildren who are missing lovers. Now, how much more dehumanization, degradation, criminal and psychopathic behaviour must we endure from this social care system that is running out of control and taking more and more children into care? Psychopathic means diminished empathy and remorse, lacking a conscience, manipulative, but appears normal. And this is woven throughout the very fabric of the care system. And if anyone in this world would like to challenge that, challenge this fact, then I would ask them to prove me wrong. Perhaps I should have sent back the book to social services with the words for my tombstone. Remember, my darling grandchildren, I loved you and fought for you after the government's army of social services took you away. And coming up to an end, and to Mr. Cameron, who constantly states that families need to be families, don't forget that grandparents are those families. A family is not a family without a grandparent, and without grandparents there are no children or grandchildren. So Mr. Cameron, please treat us with respect, as this shows a real flaw in your perfectly polished character. And I'll just end it there. Or can I go on? Finish? Yeah, all right. You're welcome. Thank you.